Webinar will begin shortly. Please remain on the line. The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen only.
All right, guys, we're here today going over session 5, Industrial Counting Dryer. Today we have Matt Patrick with one of our sister companies from Competitive Advantage. He's going to be going over a few things of how you guys can do continuous improvement. Again, we will field all questions as best as we can while we're doing this. We've got a lot of material to cover. We will make sure that if we can't get you answered right now, we'll reach out to you, or you guys can reach out to us through email or phone call through your key account specialist. So with that being said, just make sure you got your cameras on. Hopefully you guys can hear us. If you run into any issues with that, like I said, reach out to us while we're doing this. We'll do what we can to walk you through it. And I'm Mike Lyons with Industrial Counting Dryer Eastern District, and we have Matt Patrick. I'll let him take over from here. So,
hello, and thanks, Mike. So to get started on this today, what we want to talk about is reliability, continuous improvement, and how we can apply that to your facility. We'll start out with a general discussion about implemented in the past. So a great example, a common example, is cars. So in the U.S. right now, if you look at the prototypical American car company is Ford, right? We'll go with Ford. And for Japanese, it's Toyota, right? So if we look at production from 1950 between Ford and Toyota, Ford was out producing Toyota by about 3 to 1, okay? If we fast forward that, let me minimize this so I can see this. If we fast forward that to 2018, Toyota now outproduces Ford by about 50%. So the big question is, how do they do that? They were completely
what changed?
Yeah, what changed in that time? So there's one very simple answer, and it's commitment to improvement, to continuous improvement. Over the years, they have completely committed to improving their process and their system. Some examples of companies that haven't made that commitment. I think we're all aware, Radio Shack, Blockbuster, BlackBerry. I mean, BlackBerry at one time was the standard.
Right.
Phone, and they've now fell to the wayside. MySpace is also on there. So it's easy to say that. It's easy to say just continuously improve. It's a different thing when you're actually trying to implement something, or if you don't have any system in place and you're trying to look and see what's out there. I mean, there's a lot of options, and everybody has their own system, and they all call it something. I mean, between Lean, between Six Sigma, operational excellence. There's tons of them out there.
I'm sure there's a lot of programs out there that will help. It's just which one are you going to stick to and use?
Exactly. And the biggest thing that I've seen in my history is that there is no out-of-the-box system that's going to work for your organization.
Right.
It's not going to.
You're going to modify it.
You're going to modify this. Well, you should modify it.
Right.
What typically happens is, we're gonna jump into Six Sigma, or we're gonna jump into Lean. We'll send a couple people out to get trained. They're gonna come back and implement that here. It almost never works. Something like 96% of implementations fail. So most companies are a boneyard of continuous improvement systems and processes. And a lot of that's just because there is no out-of-the-box solution. You really have to be creative and take components of different methodologies and wrap them up into a way that'll fit what you do.
But you got to make it part of what you do. It's got to be a big part of it. You can't just, there's not going to be a fix-all by going to a class or learning this stuff. You have to come back and you have to implement it. Mm-hmm. And so it has to be a part of your production.
It does. It has to be a full culture shift. So I referenced Toyota going into this, but I think it's very, very important to recognize that what we are talking about is not Toyota's system. Toyota's system was designed for discrete manufacturing in that specific environment. it does not necessarily apply to all aspects of process manufacturing or even maintenance. So what we've done is we've taken aspects from the theory of constraints, from Six Sigma, from Lean, and incorporated them in a way that we can apply them, let's say, flexibly to any scenario.
Okay.
So
do you want to call it more of a hybrid, or just kind of like taking the best of all and kind of meshing it together?
Both. It's a hybrid of all different methodologies. Basically, our stance is, if it works, use it. Right? So
Okay.
there's no way that there's no reason that we should be loyal to Lean and say, let's forget all the other methodologies. Let's use what works, right?
Okay.
So as a part of this, I'd say one of the core foundations of this with maintenance is to change the maintenance department from a cost center to a profit center. And what that really means is that all of your decisions are data driven, and we can prove an ROI with any investment that we make, right? So we're improving the process by making this maintenance decision. It's not just a cost. We're actually improving the process and making the company money.
Right. And the last session, we talked a little bit about using data-driven for decision-making and facts of making changes in plants and things like that. So yeah, it's important. It's the facts. So I get it.
Yep. And one of the important aspects of, or I'd say the most critical aspect of being able to make a data-driven decision is having the data, right? So all the inspection results need to be recorded and trended. And that's, if you're looking at the slides, the section on the right are obviously the things that support the overall concepts on the left. So removing non-value added time between SMED and 6S, and we'll get into the definitions on those here.
Sure.
But between that and again, recording and trending the inspection results, and then utilizing effective problem solving, and we're going to get into all three of those throughout this webinar.
Okay. And I'll save my question.
Well, first up right there is 6S and SMED. Again, part of Lean. We are, again, just modifying as we have to make it fit process manufacturing, because typically they just don't necessarily fit one for one with a lot of what we do. So part of our total productive maintenance program, and if you are familiar with any kind of a Lean Six Sigma program, you've seen this house with the pillars before. And really, so what we've done is taken Lean 6S and SMED as kind of the foundation of this, and using theory of constraints, Six Sigma with the DMAIC process, AD problem solving, and just reliability overall, use that to really create the whole program for TPM. Okay, going to so we'll start out with 6S, and this is an extreme example of a lack of 6S.
So it's like my kids' room.
Yeah, I hear you. I think it's when you have something that looks like this, you end up having morale issues. You also have, obviously have tons of waste of time trying to find something.
This just snowballs. This is a domino effect of issues. So, and I know this seems to be kind of more the extreme of an example, but you can get this just with even some of the smaller things in a plant. But you talk about a domino effect just with this. That's crazy.
Oh yeah. I mean, if somebody told you to go find something in that's
oh yeah, exactly. You're like, no, you go find it.
So on the other end of the spectrum, we have a completely organized, clean 6S warehouse there. That's obviously the goal. So 6S, if you're not familiar, sort, set, shine, standardize, sustain, and safety. It used to be 5S. If anybody's familiar with 5S, safety was added in. And really, it should almost be the sum of the other 5S's equal safety, right?
Right.
So doing all these other.
So you want to change it?
No, it's good the way it is. Just the 6S is more of a product of the others, or some of the others.
Gotcha.
So we'll briefly go through what the 6 S's are. Again, first up is sort, and I think the biggest thing with sort is to just get rid of things that aren't needed anymore. And whether you're doing this in a plant or at your home, getting rid of the stuff that you're not using, on a regular basis, or you haven't touched in a year, you have some old, some dye or something like that, sitting in the corner of the shop that, I used that 2 years ago. Something might come up where I need it again. Get rid of it.
Absolutely. You definitely should purge.
Yeah.
You definitely should.
Yeah. And so there's the that part of it, but also just getting rid of junk in general, cleaning up, getting rid of, we have on here, defective tools and rags and things like that. Just get rid of it, clean it up. There's some obvious benefits with that. Less crowded area, easy to work in. It's overall, you're going to, as you go through this whole 6S process, you'll drastically improve your efficiency as well as your morale. So set, one of the easiest way to say set is just a place for everything and everything in its place, right? So if you have a dumpster that's supposed to go in that spot, the easiest way to do it is paint a square around that dumpster, label it dumpster. That's where that dumpster goes. There's a place for everything and everything in its place. It also makes it a lot easier to find things when you're
Organization.
Yeah, being organized, knowing where things are supposed to go. So the shadow board is a great way to do that, and it's a common example that we see across the board. So you have a shadow board, that tool's supposed to be there. If there's a shadow there, no tool, it's missing.
Well, and a lot of your, like our trailers are labeled and do have the shadow tool board like that. So we do try to keep everything organized so the guys know where it's at. They can be more efficient, get in and get out and get moving.
Yeah. So moving into shine, the next S, it's pretty simple, clean everything. So as you're going through the process, once you've gotten rid of the junk, you put everything in its place where it needs to go, make sure that it's clean.
Something simple as the inspect and repair, even for us when we're out on a job, we make sure that if we're having issues with a tool, after it's been inspected or whatever, if we do, we just pretty much red tape it. We'll change our color codes once a month, but we pretty much just red tape it and set it aside so that way we know it needs to be repaired. So just little things like that go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how much easier is it to actually inspect something if it's clean versus if it's covered in?
Right.
Okay, the next S is standardize. So once you do that to one area, just repeat the exact same thing over and over again. One of the failures in these implementations is the attempt to do a big box implementation, or a big bang implementation, where it really should be a thin slice implementation. And the difference is just that if you're in a manufacturing facility, you don't want to try to implement this across the board all at once and say, okay, Tuesday, everybody, now we're doing this. It's not going to work.
No, it won't happen.
You have to start on a small scale, and then just get some small wins, and then just repeat that over and over again, and expand it to the rest of the facility.
So do you think it would be easier to move from department to department, maybe, or?
It depends on how the facility's set up. Product line, you could either do it by product line, you could do it by department, you could do it by work area. I mean, yeah,
whatever suits. Yeah.
And just as we said for sustain, build on earlier accomplishments, it's huge. It's huge. Sustaining this is half the battle in and of itself. So it's a lot easier to just implement something and then walk away. It's going to fail. You have to really stay on top of it and sustain it and make sure that is embedded in the culture.
You got to get everyone on board.
Yeah.
You got to get everybody on board with it, and that's going to make the success of it.
And some examples of that are doing audits, workplace scans, and Gemba walks are one that is not listed on here, but typically in a manufacturing environment, you'll do a Gemba walk, which is basically like a production meeting, but management and support staff are going around to the different areas of production and conducting it on site, so you can look at the metrics, address any issues that are in that department, and doing that right there. And again, safety, all these actions really support safety. So there is here's a great example. So this is a cement kiln. So not a clean process, but this is very clean, right? And you can see that unit's actually spinning because it's blurry there. So this is actually a running unit. But you can see they have walkways painted. Even the floor underneath the oil cabinet is clean. So, okay. The handrails are all painted yellow, and if you can see in the background there, they're all exactly the same. So that's where it's standardized. It's the same across the board. And the safety guards are all in place. So this is what we want to shoot for an example of a successful success.
Okay. Looks like we have a question here. It says, what would you recommend for plants with a historically relaxed culture where operations feel free to help themselves to technicians' tools without returning them? You got any suggestions for that?
It's specifically with not returning tools or borrowing tools and not.
That's what it looks like. It looks like operators feel free to help themselves to technicians' tools without returning them.
I mean, for something like that, you really do need, I'd say, management support to draw some boundaries and say, this if production needs their own set of tools, then management needs to get that management buy-in to get production their set of tools.
Yeah, I mean, there's several different options, I guess. Like I said, get with management, find out what it is that continues to keep you taken from the technician's toolbox, or better yet, maybe even a tool crib that the company could set aside for users that when they need something. I mean, there's several options, but yeah, definitely get with management.
Yeah. Be hard to tackle without having support of management.
Or just a lock and key.
There you go, just lock them out. So the second portion of the foundation of this program is SMED. So again, and if you're not familiar with discrete manufacturing in that environment, this might be new, but so SMED, single minute exchange of dies. And when we are talking about a process manufacturing environment or even maintenance, we have to slightly skew the initial intent of this methodology. But the point of it is that you take processes that you would normally do, which extend your downtime, and change them over to external functions, which we'll get into. And you really analyze each task so that you can increase the efficiency of it. And the overall goal of this is to reduce downtime. It's to reduce non-value added time. So you want to, if there's a bearing change out, which we'll get into, you want to find the quickest way that you can possibly get that completed. So this bearing change out is going to be our example. So the way that we have this listed hopefully will help. So we have external and internal functions that are completed while doing this, right? So external, so things that can be done without like the unit being shut down, for example. So we can go collect the parts until we can mobilize. Those are things that are done outside of having the unit shut down and actually tearing this thing apart. Okay? And in implementing SMED, you want to take as many of those internal functions and switch them over to the external. So you can do all those things, without the unit being shut down, right?
Okay.
And this is where the implementation of this comes in with like crash carts and that kind of thing. So you can have some of this stuff rebuilt, ready to go on a crash cart. That way, if something goes down, you can skip a lot of these steps and just install it, right? So if we're going to try to remove some of these, so if we were able to take some of this stuff and remove it and put it on the external list, then we've now shrunk our internal processes that have to be completed while the unit's down, slowing down production or stopping production, and shorten that time so that we can get that unit back up into production.
So basically just kind of laying out a better game plan.
It is. But it's I mean, and there's things that go into this, like knowing critical path. If you know your critical path, you know your reliability, you know your likelihood of these components breaking down. So you're going from being reactive in your maintenance to now predictive in your maintenance. And when you turn that corner and you're predictive in your maintenance, you can make some of these decisions where you can say, I know that component A, B, C, and D are critical path. They have a certain likelihood of failure, and we need to have these components ready to go on crash carts so that way if something goes down, we can get them repaired quickly, get them replaced quickly, and get production back up and running.
Right. Okay.
So a great example of SMED is race cars, whether it's NASCAR, Formula One. The way that they handle pretty much everything they do is all about speed, right? Obviously, they're racing. So when they come in and they're in a pit stop, they're going to do everything as quickly as possible. We'll have a quick video. I'll wait till it gets to everybody here. All right, I think it is. It's pretty choppy. I think we'll get the gist. It's pretty quick. That's it, done. So just in that time, the tires were changed. There's a lot going on that is actually. Let's see if I can step forward and see if everybody can see this. If not, I don't want to spend too much time on it. But so as this is coming in, you have a guy there holding a sign that's telling the driver he needs to have the center of his tire exactly under that sign, so because everybody else is positioned and ready to go. They're reducing unnecessary movements, right? They want that exactly right there so they can just move right onto it, right? The tires are lined up in there as close as you can possibly get safely, right? To where all they have to do is just pop that tire on. They don't have to slide, roll it over and move it over into place. It's just everything is in its place and ready to go.
They've eliminated a lot of their downtime.
Absolutely. all non-value added time is removed from this scenario, and it's just remove and replace. That's all. They have it down to that. Now, granted, they have like 400 guys standing around that car, each one doing one little thing, but that is their primary focus. So, as we move into this, effective problem solving is a critical component of this. When you start to go through this process and you have your Area 5S, and I'll say, even if you weren't going to do 90% of this, if you just 6S'd your area and implemented SMED, you would have giant improvements over what you've had in the past.
Well, I would agree, but just implementing, like you said, implementing something,
yeah,
right, is going to be positive. But it could be a small start, even though you're starting with those programs. So.
And again, it kind of has to be in order to make it successful. You have to get that small start, get some buy-in, get some small wins, and then repeat those wins throughout the other areas. But we'll go into effective problem solving, which is really another key principle with this. What people tend to do in general is you run into an issue and you jump straight to the solution without actually analyzing that problem and everything else that can occur in there. And we have some examples of that. But when you're talking about effective problem solving, there's a lot of different options out there that are thrown at you. And so many people have heard of DMAIC, which is define, measure, analyze, improve, control. People have heard of fishbones. 5 Whys is probably the most common.
Yeah.
AD problem solving. So all these things with theory of constraints, they're all out there, and I think they're all good. They all have their pros and their cons, and that's where, again, what we tend to do is take bits and pieces of all these and put them into our system. So starting out with DMAIC. So again, Lean and Success are really the foundation. Just get everything clean. Success and SMED within Lean. Get everything clean, get it organized, get it standardized, and then implement SMED where you have single minute exchange of dies. So you've looked at your critical path and you have everything ready to go, right? Reducing your downtime. Now, the way that we tend to look at the overall process and problems is through the DMAIC methodology. So the biggest thing with DMAIC, and again, it's define, measure, analyze, improve, control.
I'm not too familiar with this one.
Yeah, and it's all it is it's just a method of analyzing problems and getting down to the root cause and developing corrective actions. So, and it's data driven, and that's a big aspect of it, which is just it's not shooting from the hip. It's you're looking at the data and you're making informed decisions. So as we go through here, these are just some of the steps that occur throughout there. So, developing a team leader, developing a problem statement, and we'll get into all those. So the problem definition, it's the start of everything throughout the process. It's what is actually our problem. And believe it or not, it can be difficult to just put that on paper.
Yeah.
So, and as this states, that aside from actually developing the root cause, it's one of the hardest things to do. You have to remove yourself from any bias, which is difficult in itself. You can't jump to a conclusion while you're writing your problem statement. The problem statement needs to be clear of any opinions. It's just fact. This is our issue.
Tough to do.
It is tough to do. And there we go. The problem definition must be free from judgments, opinions, assumptions, presumed causes. And it's difficult to do that. It's difficult to set those things aside and say, let's not look to a solution. Let's not look to a cause of this issue. Let's just look at what the actual problem is.
But it's tough to do. Most people want to jump in right away and try to fix it.
Yep, you can. But it can lead you down the wrong path, and we'll get to that. So again, this is more just defining the problem. So once we start getting into measure, and this is where having a baseline is extremely important, and that's again, it's data driven. It's having that data to say, okay, this is what normal looks like for us, so that way we know if we start to deviate from that we can react to it. If you don't establish that baseline, if you don't collect the data to know what normal looks like, then it's hard to react to that.
I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that don't know their baseline.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%.
I think most of what we see is reaction.
Oh, it absolutely is. I'd say that the majority, and it's not just our customers, but in general, most people are doing reactionary work as opposed to predictive work. And that's where our work with them, that's our intent, is to really turn that corner and get people into predictive as opposed to reactive.
Right.
So part of our DMAIC process, when we start getting into the analyze section, that really ties into reliability and calculating reliability. And I'd say one of the biggest things to hold on to with reliability is that it's not the same as availability, right? And the way that we express that mathematically is the time up divided by the time available equals your percent reliable. That makes sense? So you can either have a series system, or you can have a parallel system, or you can have a combination of two. The way that we calculate it in a series system is basically that the percentage that you're reliable per component, you just basically multiply those with each other.
Okay.
So here we have R1, R2, R3. Those are just R1 times R2 times R3. And that gives us our reliability for the three of them. The important thing to note with that is in a series system, the total reliability is always going to be less than each individual component. So here we have 99, 98, 97, your total reliability for that system is 95.
Now, would you say, though, just using your example,
Yeah.
95, pretty good?
Oh yeah, I would say it's pretty good. But the reason though that the total is lower than each individual component is just because like R3 there, that might be 100% reliable, but if R1 goes down, all three of them are down.
Oh, absolutely. No, yeah, it's
So-
chain reaction.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And that's really all it's saying. So then in a parallel system, you have some redundancy, so that's not the effect anymore. Now, the total is going to be higher than each individual one. So as that comes in, we have three components there at 99, 98, 97, and mathematically it's 1 minus R1 times 1 minus R2 times 1 minus R3. Okay? So that ends up, so if we have these three components at 99, 98, 97, that gives us a total reliability of 99.99%. That would be a very, very reliable system there. Then we have some that are combined, and what this ends up looking like is we have, what you have to do is basically break down the series portion of that, calculate that, and then you can multiply that times the parallel portion. So you do the two top ones there, 99 and 98. Those two in a series system gives you 98. Oops, went too far. Gives you 98, then you multiply that by your 97 on the bottom, which then gives you a total system reliability of 99.95.
A lot of math.
So the way that we would approach this in a plant is basically zone out the plant. So on here we have the feed, the mixers, going into the dryer. Then we have dryer inventory, the kiln, product, filter, and then filters. Third question?
Okay.
I'm not seeing it.
Derek, as for the parallel system, if those assets have different capabilities, would you include that in your multiplier for each asset?
They have different capabilities. So if they're part of two different processes, I guess that's probably what we're saying. If the components are part, well, I guess I can go to this. If the component is part of two different processes,
Capacities, not capabilities.
oh, capacities, different capacities. I'm not completely sure how to answer that in terms of if they have different capacities. Well, I mean, okay, when we're looking at the reliability, what we're looking at is basically just downtime versus available. So if that component should be available 300 days a year, and then we have planned downtime, that's probably too much, 340 days a year, and we have planned downtime of 20 days a year, we would consider the 340 as 100%. So if we have unplanned downtime of 20 days, then you're just doing the 20 divided by 340, and that gives you your percentage, which that would be your percentage reliable for that component. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I mean,
Okay. All right.
Derek, if it don't, you can beat Mike up later about it.
And
sounds good.
feel free to reach out. And we can
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we can go.
Good thing.
So the way that we would approach this going into a new plant for us is we would take the plants and separate it into zones, and that way we can focus on each individual one and really map this out. So if we take that exact diagram and do a flow chart with it, now we have it all flowed out there, and we've now assigned, so that exact calculation I just described, now we've determined that our feed is at 93%, then we have redundant mixers there, which are 96, 97, which now again, it's a parallel system, so it's combined, it'll be 99. Those go into the dryer, which is 94, and so on and so forth. So if we take all these and add them up, now we have a complete system reliability of 83%. Okay? And the way that we would tackle this is really looking more so with the theory of constraint. So this is where we will mix and match methodologies, and it's more of it's a common sense approach. So if we're looking at these, which of these would you tackle first? Like,
I don't know. I guess knowing your plant would help, and I guess for me, I would tackle the problem child first.
Exactly, the problem child. So, and that's where theory of constraints comes in. That's basically, in a nutshell, what theory of constraints is. It's tackle the problem child. So we're looking at the feed or the dryer in these two situations, or in this situation, as the two problem children that we need to tackle first, right? They just have the lowest reliability.
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. I mean, having that kind of layout and knowing your reliability, I mean, that's, to me, that makes perfect sense. Why wouldn't you want to do something like that, period?
It is. And when you start to look at critical path as well, so like in this scenario, you do have some redundancy, like with those mixers. So if one of them goes down, it's not the end of the world. It can potentially go through the other mixer. But if you understand your critical path, so if any one of the items in your critical path goes down, it's going to shut down production. Those are the items that you have to focus on. And then even understanding critical path within each of those individual components. So on the dryer, are there items that can break and it doesn't affect the use of the dryer? And are there items that break that's going to shut everything down? And
that's what I was going to say. You kind of beat me to it. I was going to mention critical components as far as parts, replacement parts. If you've got a dryer that, if it's the only dryer you have and it's gear driven, you would probably think to have a gear on hand or maybe a pinion or whatever you may need. Yeah, definitely critical parts.
So as we go into analyzing, this is where there's a lot of different things out there that you can use between the 5 whys and fish bones. So again, one of the most common ones is 5 whys, and we'll go through an example here. So the simple question, why did the dryer stop turning? First why is, well, there's an overload on the main drive and it tripped on high current. You ask, why again? Well, because the gear pinion bearing was not sufficiently lubricated. That's why. The lubrication pump was not pumping sufficiently. Why? Because the shaft pump was worn and rattling. Why did that happen? Because there was no strainer attached and metal scraps got in there. Right?
Like my kid.
Why? Why? Yeah, exactly. And that's where it's helpful though. It's helpful to dig down. Now, some of we'll go into an example first before we go into some of the downsides. But this is a great example of where if you only address the top level issue, you're not actually going to fix the problem. You're going to put a Band-Aid on it, but it's going to keep occurring. So for the Lincoln Memorial, they were having an issue where they had to wash the Lincoln Memorial way more than any other memorial. And they didn't understand why. It was just constantly dirty. They constantly had to wash it. Right? So they went through this process. Said, okay, why do we constantly have to wash the Lincoln Memorial more so than others? Because bird droppings have to be removed. Okay, well, why are there so many birds? Because they're feeding on all the spiders that are at the Lincoln Memorial. So, okay, well, why are there so many spiders there versus everywhere else? Nice question. Why does that have so many more spiders there than anywhere else? Because they're feeding on all the mites that are at that memorial. Obvious question there. Why does that memorial have so many more mites than the other ones? And it's because they're drawn to the lights at the memorial, right? Why does that memorial have so many mites compared to the other ones? And it's because the lights at the other memorials would only turn on at sunrise and turn off at sunset. So that memorial, though, turned on 2 hours before sunset and 2 hours after other way around, turned on 2 hours before sunrise and off 2 hours after sunset. So when sun went down, all the mites were attracted to the lights, and the spiders feed on them, and the birds feed on the spiders, and then there's bird droppings everywhere. So if you're only looking at the top level problem, you're just going to say, well, there's a lot of birds. And there's a lot of birds just...
So you start thinking, well, just get rid of the birds.
Get rid of
That's
the
not
birds.
the problem.
Maybe we have, like airports have dogs that come out and chase birds away. You're not gonna address the root cause of the problem, which is the lights. You would never think the lights are going to cause the bird droppings.
So it's more of a Band-Aid fix.
It would be a Band-Aid fix, absolutely. So some of the problems though with the 5 why is that it doesn't always lead to the root cause, or it can lead to one of several root causes, or you could just completely go down the wrong path.
Okay.
It happens when you're going through 5 whys. If that's your only tool, if that's what you're using, it can lead you down the wrong path. Because when you get focused on, especially if you're doing one and you're focused on that train of thought, you can go down and you can end up at a root cause that may not actually fix your problem.
Okay.
And that's basically what this is. Now the next one is the fishbone. So what we typically do is in our A3 form, which is our problem solving form, we start out in the analyze process with the fishbone. So we'll go through and list all of the different potential causes based on equipment, process, people, materials, environment, and management, and then pick the top potential causes there, and then do the 5 whys on those. So we might have 3, 4, 5 different 5 whys based on the fishbone.
It's definitely going to give you a broader view of the issues and things going on. I can definitely see how that's more beneficial using the fishbone method.
Well, and again, it's both.
But it's combined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there hasn't been one yet that I've been involved in where we've gone through this process where we've only had one 5 why. And again, that's where, if that's your only tool, if that's what you're using is 5 whys, it can be problematic because, again, every time we've done this, we'll have 2 to 3 at least 5 whys that we've gone down, and we end up with multiple root causes. So as you're using the fishbone, again, the big thing is really keep an open mind. Go through all the different the categories there, whether it's people, process, equipment, whatever it is, and look at the potential causes of that. And even if you don't think that it's a major cause, or even if you've already processed in your head that that's not going to result in a corrective action needed for it, just list it down. You never know when when you have to come back and revisit that issue.
How are we doing on time? Are we on schedule, or do you have more to cover? I just want to make sure we get it all in.
I don't know. How are we doing on time, Tim?
Yeah, time. We're 43 minutes in.
Okay.
43? Then we might actually have to speed this up. All right. All right. So looking at the improve method. So again, for DMAIC, define, measure, analyze, improve, control. As we're looking at improving it, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at theory of constraints as just a basic foundation, or it's really a common sense approach, looking at your problem children and how we can address those first. Plan, do, check, act. Again, that's a lean function. It's just really plan out the action ahead of time, do it, then you check afterwards and act. So plan, do, check, act. So the control, really, it's the same when we look at the success process. When you have sustain, control and sustain are basically the same thing. So once you have a corrective action implemented, you stay on top of it, you sustain it, you make sure that is a lasting fix, and it's not you implement something and then it goes away, and once you forget about it, and then it falls through again. So theory of constraints, we'll briefly talk about it, and it's, where do we start? And this is where starting off, we've said that you have to start small, and your first project has to be successful. If you go to implement a continuous improvement program at your plant, and the first one that you implement fails, you've already lost everybody. You're not going to get that buy-in across the board. You really have to, again, start small, start with something small and easy. Start with something you know you're going to win, and implement that. So theory of constraints, we'll briefly go through it. It really is just a common sense approach. So the little chain up there in the diagram just shows our weak link, right? Our problem child. That's the one that we're going to fix. And the way that we do it with reliability is looking at just basically which component is least reliable, and we're going to focus on that and fix that. Again, it's mostly geared towards discrete manufacturing in its creation, I guess. But we use it towards more of a process manufacturing and maintenance approach. But no matter how you say it, basically that's what you're saying is just look at your constraint, look at your problem child, look at where you're going to have an issue, and focus on that to fix it so that you don't have that bottleneck. And it's just tying back into the zone plant layout. So what we determine that bottleneck in this case is that dryer or the feed, so we would focus on those to fix it.
And I really like the zone plant layout thing. I mean, and then of course what you can do with it afterwards to find out where things are at and the reliability of it. To me, I think every plant or company should do that.
So in the theory of constraints, basically you have a bottleneck or a non-bottleneck, and then the capacity constrained resources is really the gap. So again, it's just the bottleneck is your problem child, the issue that you want to get fixed. The non-bottleneck is the issue or the components that are running fine. And again, there you go. The CCR is just the gap in between or the bottleneck. And this slide is we're just really talking about how the theory of constraints and lean tie into each other. And you could say the same with Six Sigma, lean, theory of constraints, all of it. They all tie in together. They're all aiming towards the same goal, and it's improving your process. And that's why we are not focused on one specific methodology, that we want to use bits and pieces from all of them in order to implement into our systems and our customers. I mean, if a customer asks us to come out and help them implement this, we're not just implementing lean, we're not just implementing Six Sigma or theory of constraints. We're utilizing the best of each of these systems in order to create a custom solution for them that'll work for them, that can last.
That's great.
That's it. So are there any questions that we need to?
Oh, we got a few minutes left for questions. If we can get any questions, I'm not able to see them right now for some reason, but Jason, if we're getting anything come across?
No, right now we're open though.
Okay, well, you know, Matt, I think anytime that you can get a better understanding for your plant and the equipment and the reliability, and as you mentioned earlier, making maintenance more of a profit center to keep things running smoother. I mean, to me, I don't understand, you know, I know you get kind of caught up in the day, but to be able to come in and like yourself and analyze and sit down with a company, you know, just the outcome of that and the things that you can gain from that, to me, it's a no-brainer. I don't understand why people don't do it more often, you know?
Well, it's change. It's something new. It's breaking out of the norm and looking at everything from an ROI standpoint. Is something new for most maintenance departments in general. Usually there's an ROI required for assets or capital investment. But when you're looking at just a day-to-day maintenance function, we're not really looking at ROI. When we're looking at investing in SMED so that we can have crash carts available so that we can change this stuff quickly, it's not looked at from an ROI or from an ROI lens. And that's where we're really trying to change that so that it will shift the maintenance department from a cost center to a profit center.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, and trust me, culture is a little bit of it. You know, you got to get the change, and I would think, regardless of the size of the company, anyone or any company could gain an advantage for using competitive advantage. You know, I mean, having you guys come in and sit down and go through things, I think it'd be a big plus for anyone, any company of any size. So I guess it doesn't really matter the size of the company, correct?
Oh, no, absolutely. And regardless of how, you know, if you're a small company, you're probably running pretty lean as it is, and everything that you do matters a lot. If you're in a very large company, you probably have a lot of waste and a lot of expenses that you can cut down significantly and improve your efficiency there as well.
Having something like this come in, like this type of program, how quickly could you see a change if by just implementing some type of culture like this with a plant, as far as leaning more towards, I guess, the profit side of things? I mean, would you say it's an instant change or instant, I guess, way of seeing it, or does it take time?
No, I'd say it can be instant. I mean, you're going to have low-hanging fruit that you're going to see return on immediately. Again, the good thing about analyzing it in this way is that you go into it knowing exactly what you will see and what you won't see. So if we were going to approach a client with some of these changes, there would be an ROI laid out right then. So you might have half of it that, okay, you're going to see some immediate returns on these, and some of these are more of a long-term solution, but you can see both.
So when you say ROI, that's return on investment, correct? Okay. I kind of like going back to, I made the comment about the messy aisle there with all the shelves, and teasing that, you know, it looks like my kids' room. Just with housekeeping could be a huge impact, right?
Oh, it is. And that's where I'm saying, just if you left out 90% of this and you stuck with 6S and SMED, which is just making sure that everything's clean, organized, in its place, and should be where it is, and then had some kind of a crash cart system where you can reduce downtime, just those two things by themselves are going to have a giant impact on your production.
Yeah, like I said, I agree with you. I just, the small things, right? You start small. Like you mentioned earlier, you know, just start in certain areas, you know, just start small and then start winning small battles, right? You may not win the war, but win a few battles, and as it keeps growing, then eventually it'll be put in place. You'll have success. You'll have a culture change. You'll get the buy-in. So it's a win across the board for everyone, right?
It is, and again, I can't state it enough, the thin slice implementation approach where you have that small group to start with, and that small group even needs to be people that are typically early adopters, people that are willing to try new things. You don't want to get the people that are more stuck in their ways and going to fight it more to be the first, to be the pilot program.
Right.
It's probably not going to work. You got to get the people that are willing to be the early adopters and try new things. That needs to be the pilot program. Get those small wins with them, and then they become actually ambassadors of that change and help implement it across the board.
Or would you say that maybe working with the equipment that has the most issues and getting those people, because they're the ones constantly trying to keep this thing going and the Band-Aid fixes, and I'm sure most of those people are going to be willing to jump on board with an improvement, right? I mean,
maybe. No, yeah, and that's where I functionally completely agree with you. You want to start with your biggest headache functionally. At the end of the day, people are what run this entire thing. So even if the intent is good and you're focusing on the biggest problem child mechanically or functionally, if the people that are in that area are not as open-minded or willing to try this new way of looking at it, it's still not going to succeed.
No, yeah.
To your point, it will have the biggest impact if it does succeed, but the people have to be willing to do it.
Oh, yeah, you're right. People do have to change. I get it, and try new things. But I would think, me personally, if I was having a headache of a piece of equipment and I could utilize something like competitive advantage to come in and help us to where it would make life a lot easier, to where I'm not playing fireman at 3 a.m. in the morning on a regular basis trying to keep a piece of equipment going. So,
yeah, and that's where I think a lot of the communication that occurs with something like this, if we come in and are helping a company improve some of their processes, the communication from upper management to those employees has to be very clear. We're not there, and especially if you start talking about lean, people start worrying about, I'm going to get cut. And that's not the intent of this at all. And that's where, again, just the communication and people, you know, if I come to you and say, help me improve your process, and as a result, you might get laid off, you're probably not going to be too willing to help me.
no, I understand. I understand.
And that's where, so that's really the communication of upper management within the companies, that they have to relay that that's not the intent of this. We need to improve our processes and make things work more smoothly, but it's not with the intent of letting people go.
Right. Well, again, like I said, it's about competitive advantage. It's about the reliability. And so to me, keeping the equipment going is going to ensure people still work.
Absolutely.
So, I think that's kind of it. It's a wrap for us. It doesn't look like we have any more questions coming in. That is session 5 for us here at Industrial Count and Dryer. I'd like to thank Matt Patrick for coming out, talk a little bit about competitive advantage and the reliability portion. If you guys feel that you have further questions or you need some help, please by all means reach out to your key account specialist. They can get in touch with Matt, get something set up, maybe even make a visit as things start to change for us. Maybe we can kind of get back out to seeing some people, making some visits. We'd love nothing more to come out and help you guys out. Again, we still can do it other ways. We can do the Zoom. We've been doing a lot of Zoom meetings with people, virtual tours of the equipment, and being able to help out that way. So I guess that's it, guys. I'm sure we'll be putting out some other webinars. I don't know what the schedule is right off the top of my head, but I'm sure you guys will be getting an email blast from us. Again, Matt, appreciate you coming out.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, guys. Y'all stay safe. Peace. We'll see you guys again.